I didn't make a fuss when my childhood sweetheart, Jasper Sutton, took my place again. Instead, I respectfully moved to the back seat and sat next to his good friend, Jonathan Clayton. As we walked along the bumpy road, my knee touched Jonathan's top thigh. I deliberately left him there, but he didn't move. We took a short break in the lounge area. Jasper's childhood friend found him going to the bathroom. As soon as the door closed, Jonathan grabbed the back of my neck, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me. As I got more and more interested in the hobby, I started to think it was normal for people to cheat. When Jasper Sutton's childhood friend, Kimberly Jensen, returned to the passenger seat, I neither objected nor made a fuss. I turned and opened the back door. Then I stopped in surprised. I hadn't expected Jonathan Clayton to be so busy and willing to join me on this little trip. I quickly calmed down and nodded to him politely. Jonathan, wearing glasses and looking tired, raised his eyelids and looked at me. He nodded slightly and closed his eyes again. Kimberly buckled her seatbelt and raised her eyebrows at me in annoyance. Cassie, I get carsick, so I'll sit in the front, okay? Kimmy is drunk. Be nice to her. Don't fight over small stuff. I smiled softly. Great. Jasper looked a little surprised, but said nothing, because Kimberly already had a half-eaten piece of bread in her mouth. It's delicious. Can you eat it after I'm done, Jazzy? Jasper didn't frown and ate the rest of the bread casually. Kimberly looked at me in the rearview mirror and stuck out her tongue playfully. I ignored it, picked up the soda bottle, and tried to open it. The lid was too tight, and I couldn't open it after 2 attempts. I in front. Kimberly smiled and handed the bottle to Jasper. Go to sleep, I really can't open it, you know my hands are very weak. Jasper looked at her fondly and opened the bottle for her easily. Afterwards, the two took turns sucking. Without any thought of avoiding intimacy, I feel nauseous. Just as I was about to put the bottle down, a man suddenly reached out and took the bottle under the cuffs of his black casual suit. The silver-gray cufflinks were clearly visible, neatly fastened on his slender wrists. Her hands are beautiful, with long, defined fingers and short, neatly trimmed nails. His fingers appeared silver in the changing light reflected from the car windows. While I was still wondering, Jonathan had already put the cap on the bottle and handed it to me. Just then, music started playing in the car. I quickly took the bottle and whispered, "Thank you." Jonathan nodded slightly and closed his eyes again. He might have just finished his night shift at the hospital. There were faint red blood vessels on his tired eyes. I drank my soda slowly. The car drove smoothly into the main road. Kimberly's birthday was coming up, and to celebrate, Jasper planned a short trip. 7 or 8 of us, divided into 3 cars, headed to a hot spring resort 100 miles away. As soon as we started, Kimberly almost sat next to Jasper. The music was so loud it was hard to hear what they were saying, but they were clearly enjoying themselves. Jasper and I recently had a heated argument about inappropriate intimacy with Kimberly. He promised to be more careful next time, but when I saw Kimberly again, that promise was gone. Suddenly, nothing made sense. I lowered my head, smiled to myself, and looked out the window. The mountain road is winding, and there are fallen rocks scattered along the way from time to time. The car rocked, and I had to lean to one side. Her bare knees beneath her skirt touched Jonathan's thighs, and he pressed against them. I wanted to go natural. But then I noticed a red spot on Kimberly's neck. Even a fool could recognize that it was the symbol of a kiss. No need to guess who left it. At that moment, a wave of resistance rose up in me and I froze, my knees locked in place. Jonathan immediately opened his eyes and looked at me. I pretended to be calm, staring straight ahead without looking into his eyes, but my knee, which was touching the outside of her thigh, quietly moved closer to her and pressed her hard. There was only a thin fabric between us. I could clearly feel the pain and heat of his lower body muscles. A warm current surged into my heart, and my nerves burned like electricity. My mouth felt dry and I had to swallow before I tried to get the water bottle out again. The cold water flowed down my throat, calming the anxiety and tension that was welling up inside me and allowing me to regain a clear mind. Jonathan hadn't moved his legs yet. He kept pressing on me. At that moment, I felt my heart stop completely. Then it started to speed up and out of control, but then the car suddenly changed direction. Kimberly screamed in horror from her front seat. "That's horrible, Jazzy." He praised the man dramatically, pounding his chest and whispering, "But you reacted too quickly, Jazzy. If you hadn't turned the steering wheel in time, the rock would have hit our car." Jasper laughed. "You think that's impressive? I'm a pretty good driver." Kimberly suddenly leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. "You're amazing, Jazzy." "That's a kiss." "Stop it," Jasper yelled, pretending to be angry. At least he didn't forget that his girlfriend was sitting behind him. He gave me a mocking look. "Just act your age, okay? Cassie's here." Kimberly's eyes widened into an innocent, sincere expression. "Cassie, Jazzy and I grew up together. I consider him my brother. Is that okay?" I covered myself with the blanket and smiled coldly. "Huh? Do you kiss like this at home?" Kimberly immediately felt pity for him. "You know what, Jazz? I told you Cassie hates me. Maybe I shouldn't go. I don't want to make her sad." Jasper frowned immediately. "Come on, Catherine. You're 2 years older than Kimmy. Can't you grow up a little? She's just a little girl. Spoiled and naughty. Why are you so strict?" At that moment, I no longer had the energy to argue. "Can you be more generous?" confident, but I hope you will be as generous in the future. Under the blanket, my legs were wrapped tightly around Jonathan's. The car shook slightly again, and my knees and calves were hit by the car again. Suddenly, his long, warm hand reached out and grasped my thigh. When his palm touched my cold skin, I felt a burst of burning warmth, and a stream of warm current flowed into my body. At that moment, my senses became 1,000 times sharper. I could also feel the blisters on his fingers. These were blisters caused by holding a scalpel for many years. I could feel the gentle friction as his fingers touched my skin, so I couldn't help but look at him again. He was able to sit up straight and button his collar neatly, but there was a violent twitch under his chin, indicating that he was nervous. From the side, the face is well-defined and very beautiful. It will make your heart beat faster without warning. Jonathan is an outlier in Jasper's social circle. If there was no family affection between them, such an anxious, cold, and misophobic person would never mix among these people. I recognized Jasper immediately after I met him, but every time we met, we just nodded and said hello politely. He likes silence, doesn't talk much, and his private life is like a blank sheet of paper. Jonathan would leave the party early while others played cards or exercised, and if he stayed, he would sit alone on the sofa in the corner, close his eyes and rest quietly instead of joining in the excitement around him. Jasper used to joke about it. My cousin is pretty much a recluse. He's pure and untouchable. He's 27 and he's probably never been with a woman. But last year it was okay. If you invited him to 10 meetings, he would come 3 or 4 times. If this had happened a few years ago, you would have forgotten about it. You wouldn't have seen it anymore. In fact, I had heard of Jonathan in college and would occasionally see him from a distance. I think he always looked like the man a woman imagines her first love to be. Distant and untouchable, the moon was high in the sky. We didn't have much contact other than a couple of trips to the hospital for chest pains. I came across a date card with his name on it. I was a little shy at first, but Jonathan is a true professional. Then I calmed down pretty quickly. Then I cursed myself in my heart. Jonathan is a surgeon. What couldn't he see before? Even though I was young, pretty, and healthy, to him I was just another body. But during the exam, when his hand touched me, I couldn't help but close my eyes and my face turned red. When I left a little later, I didn't know if it was my imagination or if the room was just too hot. But even Jonathan's ears were a little red. JG, should we stop at the next rest stop? I need to use the bathroom. Kimberly's voice suddenly woke me up from my meditation. I bit my lip slowly and tried to move my legs, but Jonathan's fingers tightened. I dropped my eyelids, unable to move. After a while, the car stopped. Kimberly immediately whispered to Jasper to join her in the bathroom. Jasper looked back at me with a slightly confused expression. But suddenly Jonathan spoke. His voice was slow and calm. He's sleeping. Jasper seemed to relax for a moment. John, I'm going to use the bathroom with Kimmy. I'll be right back. Jonathan grunted briefly in response. The car door opened. The resort was currently closed. Soon their voices died down and there was silence. Catherine. Jonathan suddenly grabbed the blanket from my legs. You're already sweating. Aren't you hot? I lowered my head even more, not having the courage to look him in the eye. I grabbed a bottle of water and took a sip to hide my embarrassment. But he took it away from me. Don't drink water, that's too cold. Have you forgotten the medical advice I gave you? I don't know where I got the courage from, but I suddenly raised my head and met his eyes. Dr. Clayton's medical skills are really not very good. Oh? His brows furrowed slightly. Why? I followed your advice, took the medicine, and avoided the foods you recommended, but I'm still sick. His frown deepened. Are you still in pain? It really hurts right now. I bit my lip and raised my chin to resist. Dr. Clayton, should I go back for another checkup? A few feet outside the window, Kimberly took Jasper's hand. The two were so close that not even a breath of air could pass through. Jasper stroked her hair lovingly and pinched her cheek. They looked like a perfect, inseparable couple. I felt the anger and frustration pent up in my chest, desperate to find a way to vent. Before I knew it, I was holding Jonathan's hand. Or, could Dr. Clayton do your job as a doctor and examine me now? Just as his hand was about to touch my chest, he quickly retracted it and immediately grabbed the back of my neck tightly. He pulled me towards him. Catherine. He lowered his eyes to look at me. I had to look up to meet his gaze. Don't try to lure me here. Are you talking to me? I didn't back off, but met his gaze. Dr. Clayton, are you saying you have no medical ethics? Are you just going to sit back and ignore a patient who is feeling unwell? Before I could finish my words, he suddenly took off his glasses and kissed me. The taste is very unique. A faint bitter taste, mixed with the fragrance of disinfectant, seemed to seep out from every inch of her skin, completely enveloping me.